In my previous video, I showed off Microsoft's fantastic Adaptive Joystick. Using it for movement alongside a mouse for camera controls proved an excellent way to play compatible PC games. And at only $30, it's not too much of a wallet drain either. Unfortunately, it does lack common features like Bluetooth, an internal battery, or gyro support. No matter how cheap or comfortable a controller is, those missing features are likely deal breakers for many folks. Fortunately, Joy-Cons are easy alternatives that many folks likely already have on hand. While they're designed to be used alongside a Switch, they're still just Bluetooth controllers that connect to almost any computer or phone you have lying around. Add a Bluetooth mouse and voila, it's much the same experience as the Adaptive Joystick, but with support for gyro aiming and without the long cable. Sounds like an easy recommendation, right? Well, not quite. Although Joy-Cons can be set up as excellent WASD substitutes, they're not quite plug and play. So let's take a better look at what these controllers can do, how to solve some pain points, and some considerations you might make if you decide to try this setup for yourself. Let's start out on a high note. What does it look like when the Joy-Cons are working perfectly? A Joy-Con in my left hand and a mouse in my right, none of it feels extremely different than the Adaptive Joystick, except for the joystick needing a wire and feeling a lot more comfortable with my default grip. The Joy-Con's straight design even makes face buttons easier to hit without completely shifting my grip. The buttons will never win any awards for satisfaction or responsiveness, but they're incredibly reliable, which is more important sometimes. Similar to the Adaptive Joystick, I've found myself mapping A and B to the shoulder and trigger. Meanwhile, the side buttons get X and Y, and the face buttons are set to menus, gyro toggles, or other rarely used but necessary buttons. It all works quite well in games like Hi-Fi Rush and Portal 2. Having movement on a stick and camera on a mouse continues to be an oddly comfortable setup. And the quality rumble on my Joy-Con add a bit of extra feedback while playing. I highly recommend trying this for yourself. But just be aware that this setup is far from perfect for Steam gameplay due to some quirks Steam has with Joy-Cons. Pairing a single Joy-Con, which is what I typically want to do, Steam only interprets the Joy-Con as being held horizontally, with no toggle to reinterpret input as vertical. As such, the default experience is all controls being rotated 90 degrees. Fixing this issue requires a bit of fine-tuning in Steam input. Considering I remap most of my buttons anyway, that's not so bad for me. However, for folks looking to use a single Joy-Con as a one-handed controller with the default button mappings, it could be a pain. It's also important to note that without rotating the stick 90 degrees in settings, it's going to be just about impossible to use. Gyro's also rotated, by the way. Since Steam's rotating the center of the controller, vertical movement no longer works as expected while holding the controller vertically. Instead of being able to lift the controller, I need to roll it in order to use vertical movement. It's usable, but not ideal. Settings for this can be adjusted to ease the pain, but I've yet to find a configuration that actually feels natural. Luckily, there is a way around this problem without fine-tuned settings or hunting down custom software. Connecting a second Joy-Con and enabling the Steam input setting to combine inputs automatically sets each Joy-Con to one half of a standard controller. I'm guessing it's what most people will want to do by default if they're looking to use Joy-Con controls. But it's still not perfect. First, having a second controller connected that I'm not using feels awkward at best. Second, when both are connected, only the right Joy-Con has gyro input. As a right-handed person, I tend to hold my mouse in my right hand, meaning that I'm basically never going to be able to use gyro input with split controls. It all has just enough jank that I'd likely reach for my Adaptive Joystick before a Joy-Con, wireless input be damned. But still, for the right person, I could see all this jank just being a small roadblock to exactly the setup they were looking for. Plus, if you opted for two Joy-Con instead of a Joy-Con and mouse, it also feels like using a really compact Wii remote and nunchuck, which might be up some folks' alley. In fact, while testing the split controls for this video, I found that Joy-Cons might be the best controllers for Wii emulation, outside the original controllers. With both connected, Dolphin automatically detects the gyroscope and accelerometer within the right Joy-Con to use for shake and pointer input, and it works quite well. Pointer input feels reasonably precise for gyro aiming. Mapping a button to recenter when needed is likely a good idea, but I've yet to experience any issues where I felt like I was fighting my controller during gameplay. Your mileage may vary, of course, but with a bit of patience, it seems just about good enough to use for light gun or other Wii cursor-centric gameplay. Shake controls are admittedly a bit wonkier by default though. In Donkey Kong Country Returns, I found that Dolphin only detected a shake on the downswing. As a result, I found myself having to expend twice as much effort for simple commands. Not great, and kinda a pain on my wrist. However, it can be fine-tuned in settings, and shaking can even be mapped to the left Joy-Con's accelerometer in a pinch, if needed. If you've been thinking about diving back into your Wii library via emulation, it might be a good setup to try for yourself. Altogether, for my needs, the Adaptive Joystick still comes out on top due to its sheer ease of use and breadth of compatibility. I'm not exactly a fan of all the trial and error needed to troubleshoot Steam's interpretation of Joy-Cons. Still, for folks who really want a similar setup, but with a wireless controller, with gyro support and rumble sprinkled in, Joy-Cons turn out to be a surprisingly competent option. With that in mind, I know Joy-Cons aren't for everyone. Some folks hate the sticks, others find the controllers to be a bit too small, and luckily that's also sort of the beauty of Switch input. There are a ton of varied options to choose from to find one that fits your style. If you want taller, Hall effect sticks with bigger grips, MobilePad's M6 HD are fantastic options. They're what I typically use while playing my Switch handheld and transition great to wireless input. Their size does make them a bit less refined, and the side buttons a bit harder to press without reaching, but they feel more substantial overall. They're also not the only options. Throw a stone and you're bound to hit a company riffing on the Joy-Con design, like this GameCube-style controller from Nixie. When buying a Joy-Con-style controller for yourself, just make sure you're buying something that does in fact have Bluetooth, gyro, and rumble that doesn't feel terrible. Given the Switch's popularity, there are a surprising amount of Joy-Con-like controllers that don't have all three. Alternatively, if you're fine with the standard Joy-Con design, there are plenty of options to mod it to your liking. Hall effect and TMR sticks are easily available on Amazon if stick drift is a concern. Likewise, sellers on Etsy and companies like Extreme Rate sell an abundance of new shells and buttons to customize your Joy-Cons however you'd like. Whatever you do, just make sure to also pick up wrist straps if you don't have them already. The actual strap isn't really as important as the extra button toppers to make the rails more comfortable and SL and SR easier to hit. With the right setup, split Joy-Con controls can be excellent for PC gaming. It's just all a matter of what you want to make it, you know? Those have been my thoughts though. Now I'd love to know yours. Have you tried using a Joy-Con alongside a mouse before? Do you have any tips or tricks you'd recommend for others trying this setup? Or do you have questions while getting your own setup up and running? Let me know down in the comments. As always, if you found this video interesting or informative, go ahead and give it a like to let me know, and then get subscribed for more controller-related videos in the future. If you'd like to check out my previous videos on the Xbox Adaptive Joystick or MobilePad M6 HD, I'll have links down in the video description, alongside links to some other products I mentioned in this video. That's going to be all for this video though. Thank you so much for watching all the way until the end. Till next time, catch you later.